Hi. Today's conversation um, uh, looks like one of the simplest questions I've been asked, and almost puts me off of wanting to respond because it's just one of those things that you just deal with as it comes. But it does present a couple of very interesting ideas related to our field. I remember when I was a young student, Gamble, at one point, or perhaps it was just among the reading that Gamble had given to us, for example, the Ang via Amari Duval. I believe there's a concept, there's an idea in there expressed by Ang, in which he says, unless you have a concept of the thing fixed in your mind and eye, you'll be pushing shapes around all day long. And there's something so fundamental in that with the way we work. And I think it's with the way anybody works, unless you're just a mechanical transfer of data, at which point I do suggest you switch to using cameras. But this is the question or the point from Richard. He says certain paintings by Sargent that were painted out of doors over a long period of time, Carnation, Lily, Lily, Rose, for example, as described by Charteris, must pose many more difficulties than working from spots, effects, and nature as it appears in a steady north light of a studio. And, it doesn't just pose problems, it actually creates insurmountable difficulties. You wind up actually in that kind of a situation, and we know that he painted Carnation, Lily, Lily, Rose. We'll put the picture on the screen, but that's on the cover of this Sargent book here. But we know that he painted those, I think, over several years. And I want to tell you, even 5 years. Well, and these kids must have just been growing up and all the rest. I had a portrait like that in which it took, I think, a couple different times. The young kids at that age were going, were getting from maybe 9 or so to 12 as the portrait sittings would get dragged out a little bit. And you do watch changes in children, for example, but say you're in a garden, the garden's going to be different from year to year if you wind up coming back. For example, if he actually was just doing a sort of a vacation time with the family, I think it was the Vickers family. If you're just doing a summer thing and you come down there at the same time every year on a plan, and it is the time of year which the lilies are blossoming away. Well, the temptation would be to try to reset the whole thing, but the flowers in every garden are going to be different every single time. They won't come up in the same places. They won't be the same height. They'll be different for different reasons because of the rain or not lack of rain in a given year, so on. So all that stuff obviously makes a mess, so to speak, out of your predictability. What I found, though, is that you can manage those kinds of things if you have a pretty clear concept and of what it is that makes that thing special. In other words, a sense of the thing that I'm going to say, that aesthetic thing that it's embodied in that. If you don't have a sense of that, you can come back year after year and find that you're just being dragged around. Even in a studio, you can find yourself just being abused from one day to the next. A change in the weather. We work in North Light. You come in there on the second day. If you're watching my time lapse, we must have had 8 different kinds of days in 13 sittings, and you can see those shifts, and you have to be able to maintain your the integrity of your first idea right through those things, and you can. But you can do it if you have a concept of what you're up to in these various ways. If you don't have a concept of the color scheme, if you don't have a concept of the value scheme, if you don't have a concept of the essential composition, in other words, what makes it a satisfying distribution of effects and colors and all sorts of things. Of course, that'll be a problem. But but the point is, you have to have concepts like that fixed in your mind, and the idea of fixing your mind and eye is a big deal. And then changes can come and go. Flowers come and go. And one of the points we addressed earlier, just briefly, was somebody was saying, well, so when you sit down to paint a landscape, you change trees around, and you do this and you move that and all that sort of stuff. And I've never found that that's actually precisely the way it works. And this would be a case in point. We're doing the carnation lily picture. That your composition, you may come in and find that a flower is in a different place, and undoubtedly you would, and you would just simply make a judgment at that point. And this leans heavily on the concept of a good start, by the way. If you don't put down a good start, in other words, you don't get the main players producing the main events, producing the great play of the composition, you can't do what I'm talking about right now. So, but if you do, if you have that and you've expressed it in your lay-in, and you've kept working on it, and then the year ended and you came back the next year, those things will be sitting there before you. And the flowers may have changed, but you now have the option of changing or not changing. So gamble with hair. You come in every day and the hair is different on a model. Women with long hair, it's impressive how the feast changes. And Gamble used the expression movable feast. But it's not that you want this flower here or that flower there. We're talking about the distribution of spots, and it makes it a much simpler problem. So all you may need is a piece of a flower, or suddenly you see that a shape just where you need it to be interesting isn't interesting, and then you come in that day and look at that, just where I needed it too. Do you know what I'm saying? So you just learn to make sure you have expressed your concept in the start. That's what I find. And then in the lay-in. But that's true indoors, outdoors, anytime. It doesn't make any difference. You need to do a really good start in our way of working. You need to have fully expressed the color scheme, the values scheme, the visual order, and the composition. They all have to be on there. And if you just deal with the majors, they will be. And you go from there. But that's just my 2 cents worth. That's what I've found, But this is no different, in my view, from the idea of the movable feast of the hair. It's simply there in a portrait. It's true. If we set up still lifes with live flowers in the studio, you're going to have that problem, and you really need to paint faster or use fewer flowers, or else you wind up with a far more generic expression, even when you're working in the studio. But I'm not one of those guys who likes creating difficulties that I can't win at, or that just simply give me a more compromised look that's just not, it's not impressive, it's not striking, it's not convincing, I guess is the best word. So, there is such a thing as good thing, as the right thing to paint, things that are good, that work well with your way of working, with your way of approaching things. There are best subjects, dying flowers, cutting up a fruit and leaving it open. If you can do that in the day that you're there, that's, then, and nail it, then it's yours. If you have to switch it out another day to get a fresh one, one at a time, those kinds of things are doable. Flowers are much more difficult to change out live flowers, and most people, certainly most of my students will, while some of them experiment with and do work with live flowers, do set up still lifes with artificial flowers. I think most people do. So anyway, Richard, I think that's the best way to leave that. Let me look for any other things I might have missed. Yeah, okay. Well, that just because it embodies the idea of having a concept of the thing and actually having a great start. Those are the two primary benefits of our way of working. If you really can get to those places. And our emphasis really is on a powered-up start. So you can look at a painting by the time you finish the first day, the first lay-in, which, as I said, I try to do on Friday so that it's dried by Monday. I want to work on a dried surface. So that means on that first day, you have to have powered up all the major players to the extent that you could actually say, wow, that's a nice picture already. Right? The thing as a whole is all on there. All the major players are on there. If you spend 1 minute of time doing a secondary thing or an unimportant thing, you will not achieve that start. And that's, a word to the wise. Anyway, thank you very much. Please do comment, share, and subscribe and all. And we'll see you next time.